Come and get me!
I'm here to stop this.
You're too late, Sam. The storm has already started.
The primary reason I wanted to see this movie was because I wanted to see that matchup. Sam Wilson's Captain America versus the Red Hulk. That is just such a cool matchup. Anyway, good evening, folks. Hope you're all having a good work week. Good Valentine's Day, too, I guess, because that's when I'm recording this. So, I just got back from a screening of the new Marvel movie, Captain America, A Brave New World, the latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has people, honestly, kind of just giving an enthusiastic meh. I have heard a lot of mixed opinions on this movie. I've heard some people say that it's actually pretty good. I've heard some people say it's really bad. The majority of people that I've looked at say that it's just okay. And now I am here to give my own opinions on the quality of this movie. I know there's a lot to get through, and that is sort of the problem with this series now, but we'll get to that later. So, I love the MCU movies. I still remember when the original Iron Man came out, before it came out, when I would tell people I was into Marvel comics and superheroes and all that stuff, I would get picked on a lot for it. And then Iron Man comes out, followed by the Incredible Hulk, Captain America, and Thor. And all of a sudden, these superheroes that I had always known and loved were suddenly the coolest thing in the world. And it wasn't a matter of me liking this stuff before it was cool. I was just happy that people are finally seeing what I had always seen with this stuff. Just all these great personalities, the powers, the fight scene. It was just one of the best times ever to be a fan of comic books, you know, where everyone was just loving the movies based on all this great source material. However, I'll be the first to admit that the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't really been firing on all cylinders since the end of, you know, the last phase of Avengers, you know, the whole Endgame saga with Thanos. The last really good film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as far as I'm concerned, was Shang-Chi, and that was primarily because it followed the formula that all the Marvel movies had really followed up to that point, finding these characters from very specific environments and mythologies and building films around them, you know, just ever expanding the universe that all this great stuff takes place in. But after Shang-Chi, it seems like the direction of the MCU changed, and I hate to say it was for the worse. Instead, the film started to get really preachy with a lot of philosophy, political commentary, and social commentary that, you know, yeah, you can have that stuff in a Marvel movie. I'm not saying that you can't, but it needs to be subtle. You get up on a soapbox and you preach to the world about how it should be, and people are just going to walk away. But if you entertain them with stories where they can draw their own conclusions about, you know, how all this stuff that's taking place on screen compares to, you know, reality, then, you know, it'll come across a lot more naturally because people don't realize that they're being preached to. But unfortunately, a lot of these movies have just, you know, been preachy at worst, or they've just been incredibly forgettable, as is the case with, you know, stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and I hate to say this, but also The Falcon and Winter Soldier, which, you know, while not a bad show in the grand scheme of things, it was just kind of a forgettable show as well. It was just kind of dull to watch, and you just kind of get the sense that it would have been better served as a movie as opposed to a TV show. But now we're actually getting a movie based on that, and, you know, I was really concerned because the last MCU movie I saw was Deadpool and Wolverine, which, for the record, is a great movie. It's so funny. But watching that movie, I was concerned just how it would sort of taint people's perception of the films that followed it, because like a lot of Deadpool and Wolverine was just Deadpool making fun of the MCU and how much it has failed in the past couple of years, and Disney allowing that through. They really needed to get back on their A game, go back to that winning formula that made them so successful in the first place. Otherwise, they were just kind of going to look like they were ignoring all the criticism that they've had all these years, especially the criticism that was coming from internally now with Deadpool and Wolverine. And to be honest, I had my own reservations about Captain America: Brave New World. I didn't really like the way the trailers looked. I figured it would get, trying to be a commentary on the least recent political landscape. I was afraid they were going to make, compare General Ross to, President Trump. But I was still enthusiastic about it because, I love the Captain America films. They are some of my favorite films in the MCU. And so I was hoping that level of quality would be maintained with this new one. And while I'm happy to say that that is the case, this is still a good movie, I would say. It's just not the movie that's going to bring back the MCU, I would say. So in Captain America: Brave New World, General Ross has been elected President of the United States and is currently brokering a deal between the world powers to share the resources that were found on the celestial body, that god that emerged from the ocean in the Eternals. And this is a little out of character for General Ross, because this is a guy who has always made an effort to control all the enhanced beings within the Marvel Universe. So people would typically think that his first instinct would be to take all those resources on the celestial body and just hoard them for the United States. But instead, he's trying to share them. And he's also trying to revive the Avengers as well. And he's calling upon Sam Wilson, who has taken the title of Captain America now that Steve Rogers has passed on, to head up reforming the Avengers, which is something that he's not eager to do, mostly because he's not comfortable with the idea of answering directly to General Ross, especially considering their history. After all, this was the guy who put him and all the other superheroes who sided with Captain America, Steve Rogers that is, in prison following the Civil War. However, something sinister is afoot, as a ghost from General Ross's past has come forward with the intention of destroying his legacy, and in doing so, possibly leading the world to a global conflict. So now Sam Wilson has to figure out what's going on here before things get completely out of hand. Okay, so right up front, I want to really praise Marvel and Disney for this. Thank you for not getting super political with this. I know a lot of people looked at the trailers and probably thought that this was going to be a negative commentary on President Trump. I figured that would be the case, and I didn't want to watch that because I didn't freaking care. But it's not. As I was watching the movie, every time General Ross was on screen, every time he was talking about politics and all that stuff, I didn't make any real connections to the real world. I just saw the character General Ross, and that is a good thing. And while I'm sure there is some commentary on display there, which I'm not going to go into because I don't think that's really important in the grand scheme of things here, I just want to praise the film for not being preachy about it. This feels like the most natural Marvel movie we have seen since Shang-Chi, which is a good thing. And the other thing I really want to praise about this film is the plot. This is actually a really good plot, and it's primarily because the focus is where it needs to be, and that's on the conflict between Captain America, Sam Wilson, and General Ross. So this was a conflict that needed to happen because, as I said at the top, General Ross is one of those people in the Marvel Universe that has always tried to control everything, particularly the enhanced individuals. For those of you who don't remember, this is the guy who is always trying to run down the Hulk for the purposes of harnessing that power for the United States government. And this is also the guy who is really pushing the Sokovia Accords because he really wanted to consolidate that power for the United States. And that's not to say that General Ross was necessarily evil. While he definitely did do a lot of bad things, he did have good intentions. But what was bad about it was that he really only had the well-being of America in mind and didn't really care a great deal about the rest of the world. It also didn't help that he really forced his beliefs upon the other characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which, you know, isn't going to fly, especially with Captain America. So, but what's interesting about Ross in this movie is that he's not trying to do that. A big theme of the movie seems to be, overcoming one's past mistakes and actually trying to be better. And that's what Ross is trying to do here. Like I said, he's not just trying to take the resources on the celestial body for himself. He is trying to share with the other world because after everything that has happened since Endgame, he feels that the future of humanity would be better served if we all work together, which, you know, is really powerful, especially coming from that man. But it also doesn't ignore the fact that this is a man who has done a lot of bad things. And what's even worse about that is he's done some bad things that, you know, we didn't know about up to this point. And that primarily comes in the main villain in this movie, which I don't want to spoil, but let me just say, this was a villain that I've wanted to see in the MCU for a long time. And when I say a long time, they teased this character way back in the Incredible Hulk, one of the first two films in the series. So to finally see him brought here and have him be incorporated into this plot in such a brilliant way and be depicted so beautifully as well, like, it was fantastic. Like, it was exactly how I pictured the character would always be in here. It's been so long since I felt that way about a character in the Marvel Universe. It just felt like they jumped straight from the page onto the screen, which is amazing. But the film isn't just about Ross. As I said, it's also about the conflict with Sam Wilson. And I feel like the conflict here is very meaningful because one of the things that people have also derided this film for is that, Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson, is taken over as Captain America as opposed to Steve Rogers. For example, my dad refused to go see this movie because, you know, he saw it as the woke Captain America. Like, he didn't really understand why it wasn't Steve Rogers there anymore. But first things first, this is not a new concept. It happened in the comics, so I don't really care that they decide to do that. And also, it's handled really well here. Part of the problem with Falcon and Winter Soldier is that it really didn't do a good job really, understanding what makes Falcon's situation here so interesting. It's similar in a sense to Miles Morales as Spider-Man in the Into the Spider-Verse movies. What's interesting about the character's struggle here isn't just the fact that he's having to shoulder the weight of being a superhero, is that he's having to fill the shoes of, one of the greatest superheroes ever. With Miles Morales, he's having to fill the role of Spider-Man. Those are some big shoes to fill. And arguably, Sam Wilson here has to fill even bigger shoes. Like, he is basically filling the role of the champion of the free world, which is what Captain America is supposed to be. And the film definitely dives into that. It's like there's a lot of times where where Sam Wilson is really struggling to think about what the right thing to do in this situation is because he doesn't trust Ross. But he also understands that if he doesn't help Ross, that a global crisis could break out. So there is a very deep conflict here. And I like how between these two characters, there isn't really a good or bad guy. They both have their faults, but there is a bigger player at work here. And it just, man, it's so good. It is so good. Like, there are some talented writers here. Like, I don't think that can be denied. It was just outstanding, I would say. And it also helps that it's sort of integrating, the freaking Eternals into the future of the MCU in a very smart way. Like, when I saw the Eternals, I thought for sure that they were just going to, retcon that stuff out of the MCU through all the multiverse shenanigans that's going on. But nah, like, they found a really smart way to incorporate that stuff in there, and I like where it's going too. So yeah, this is a pretty good movie. Good character study, a good villain, a good conflict, complex themes and issues. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I wanted to see in a Captain America movie. However, I do have some issues with the film, and some of them are the film's fault, while other issues is stuff that I can't really help. In regards to what the film can't help, there's just something about the direction here that didn't sit right with me. I don't know if it was the theater that I went to see it in, or if it was just the filter they decided to use for the film, but it just had this really hazy, foggy, fuzzy quality to it that just kind of made it unappealing to look at. It didn't have that crispness that you typically see in modern big-budget movies. I also wasn't a big fan of the direction here. While the action scenes here aren't bad per se, in fact, there are some really good ones in here. The best part of the movie is the one that is advertised in the trailer, and that's Sam Wilson's Captain America versus the Red Hulk, which is just such a beautiful matchup. When people think about comic book characters they want to see go at it, they're always quick to throw characters who are very similar to Gary, like Thing versus Hulk, for example. But here you have two characters with vastly different power sets and abilities going at it, and like the way they did it in the film was great. Just Sam Wilson struggling, using everything he has at his disposal to deal with the Red Hulk, and for it to just be this losing battle was just unbelievably cool to watch. And, I also really like how they portray Sam's abilities in this movie as well. Unlike, he didn't take the super soldier formula, so he's having to rely on gadgets and everything in order to make up the difference in physical abilities between him and the original Captain America. And I really like that. It's kind of like combining Captain America with Batman and Iron Man. It was really cool to watch. Also made for some really interesting fight scenes in the movie where he's not using the Falcon gear, but, just really smart. It's almost like he was calling upon MacGyver skills. It was a lot of fun. But what was I saying earlier? The action scenes, it's hard to explain, but watch this movie, and then when you get back from the theater, watch Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and compare what the Rousseau brothers did to what was done here with the action scenes, and you'll probably get what I'm talking about. Also, I really think this film could have used a few more rounds in the editing room. There were just some scenes in the movie that I feel dragged on a little too long. For example, at the end of the movie, there's a wrap-up where Sam is chatting with his sidekick in the movie, the new Falcon, and I don't know, that conversations like that just kind of went on a little too long, and I can think of several moments in the film where that kind of happens. So yeah, this is one of those films that could definitely stood to be cut down a little bit more, especially considering it is over 2 hours, so it can be a little tiring for some people. And the other issue this film has, and unfortunately this is a bigger issue, it's with this film, I kind of realized that the sheer size and scope of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is now starting to have a detrimental effect on it as a whole. So, for starters, this film draws upon a really old and frankly unpopular movie in the MCU with its main villain, the Incredible Hulk, which came out in 2008, I think it was. And it's hard to think about how long ago that is, but that's a film that is probably not fresh in people's mind anymore. And it was a very unpopular movie in the MCU. It's also one of the ones that isn't always on Disney Plus, so it's one that a lot of people would have missed. And then there's also stuff that's calling back to the Eternals as well, which I know a lot of people didn't see, and they shouldn't see it because it is a terrible movie. But we're just starting to run into a similar issue that One Piece has, where people are starting to pass on it because it's just too big. Like, there are over 40 movies in the series now, and because of that, like, if you're not into the MCU right now, it's hard to go into a movie like Captain America: Brave New World and really get invested in it because there's so much you don't know and understand about it. And a lot of people say, oh, they can just go and watch the old movies. Like, that's not as easy as a lot of people think it is. That's a big time sink in and of itself. Like, each movie, like, was between hour and a half to 2 hours. So, 40 movies, I mean, that's 40 hours of content you gotta watch. 80 hours, actually. So, yeah, like, we are getting to the point, like, I've always said that the MCU could continue. It could continue because there is so much more in the universe that you could call upon. There are bigger threats than Thanos out there, and there are lots of hints that they are coming, especially with the new Fantastic Four movie that's coming out. We are going to get a glimpse of some of those threats that are coming, but it's just becoming too much for people these days, so yeah, maybe it is time to shelve the MCU, and it really does make me sad to say that because, as I said, I do really love these movies. There are only maybe 3 films in the entire franchise that are remotely bad, and the only one that I would say is unbearable is Eternals. So, but maybe because of that, it is time to call it quits on all this. Because while A Brave New World is good and a great entry in the MCU, I would say, I don't think this is a film that is going to get people to go back to the theaters to watch these. Like, again, my dad used to go watch these movies with me, and while he's got his own reason for not wanting to see this one, very silly reasons, I would say, there are other people who haven't seen any of these movies who are just going to completely pass on this because they don't want to invest the time to catch up on it. So, yeah, it's a shame that that's starting to affect movies like this. So, yeah, I can really only recommend this film to, big fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's just not going to pay the bills anymore. Like, part of the reason so many of these movies were able to come out at such a rapid pace is because they appeal to such a broad audience. These are films that everyone was seeing, but now it's gotten to the point where these aren't films that everyone is seeing. These are films that only people who are big fans of it are going to see. And while that's still going to be lucrative, it's not going to be as lucrative as it once was. But regardless, I thought that Brave New World was good. It's a lot better than people are giving it credit for. It's not a masterpiece or anything. Like, of the Captain America movies, this is easily the worst one. But I would say it is slightly above average for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know what? No, it's above average for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, if any of that sounds like a film you want to watch, go to the theaters this weekend, check it out. Who knows? You might be made a fan. And if you do want to check out all these movies, I think Disney Plus still has a free trial. You could probably binge watch all of them within a month before it times out. So, if you want to give that a try, I mean. But yeah, Captain America: Brave New World. I do recommend it, but only if you're a big fan of the MCU. That's going to do it for this one, guys. I'll see you next time.